And you see, this is a Hearst newspaper. This was the controlled corporate media, the yellow press, as it was called. Now you see, McKinley doesn't like this. President McKinley is a conservative Republican. He's not an imperialist. He says, I don't want the Philippines. It costs too much trouble. We're going to get a lot of people killed. And a lot of people did get killed. So the Hearst press whips up public opinion so that both houses of Congress demand from McKinley that he takes the Philippines, that he goes to war, and that he takes the Philippines. But you can see from this that he's not a good imperialist. So what are they going to do? Here's McKinley. 1897 to 1901. They kill him. Here he is getting shot twice by an anarchist, Leon Czolgosz, in Buffalo, 1901, at the Pan American Exposition. Now, the story with this is that Czolgosz is another kind of patsy. In this case, he's the Manchurian candidate. He's either somebody who's already a psychotic, or he is brainwashed to the point where he is a psychotic, and then told to go out and do these things. In these decades, the typical patsy was an anarchist. Italian anarchists were very common. Polish or Russian anarchists were equally prominent. So this guy Czolgosz, now who's behind him? Here's Czolgosz. He is a mentally disturbed recluse who comes out of the individual life, no friends, and goes and kills the President of the United States. Who's behind him? Emma Goldman, a leading anarchist. She had worked for the British against the Russian Empire in Poland, and then she was brought over to the US and she set up a settlement house, and she essentially prepped Czolgosz to go and kill the President of the United States. Now the outcome of this is that Theodore Roosevelt, a determined imperialist, is going to become the US president. Now how about this one? The American president who most succeeded in mastering the invisible government for his 4 terms, at least 3 plus a couple of months, is of course Franklin D. Roosevelt. And I will defend Roosevelt against various slanders against him a bit later on. But this is the attempt by the invisible government to assassinate Roosevelt before he took office. You see, here we are on February 15th, 1933. We're approaching the very bottom of the Great Depression. Hitler has just seized power in Germany. And the question is, who's going to be president of the United States? Here he is in a motorcade in Miami with a man called Chernak, who was the mayor of Chicago. And as you can imagine, mayor of Chicago, a very important guy in the Democratic Party. There's an attempt to kill Roosevelt. They miss Roosevelt and kill Chernak. This is not widely known. So approximately 30 years before the Kennedy assassination, there's an attempt to assassinate Roosevelt. And this shows us these are the 2 presidents who attempted to fight back against the invisible government. Roosevelt and Kennedy, they're the only positive figures we have the whole time. So one of them gets an assassination attempt, and 30 years later the other one actually gets liquidated. And again, this is a continuum. The faction doing this is the same one. It's the 9/11 faction, the September criminals, the Vietnam War faction. There's Chernak, killed because he was sitting behind Roosevelt. He was also an important guy, but that was not the point. Now, at a certain point, we get an American war hero of World War I, General Smedley Butler, who comes forward and says, you know, they tried to kill Roosevelt. Now they're trying to organize a fascist coup. This is a very interesting story. Mussolini's March on Rome, 1922. The Morgan Group, and this is very well documented, the Morgan Group says, let's organize a march on Washington, a la Mussolini, and get rid of Roosevelt and put in a fascist dictator of the United States. This is an active plan of the Morgan Group. So this is their goal. Put somebody like this in control in Washington, D.C. And they've tried to kill Roosevelt and failed. Now they're going to try to organize a plot, and of course the plot is discovered and it fails. Now, let's see where we are. Okay. We're practically in our present time. We're going to talk for a minute about Pearl Harbor. Now, libertarians, I think, very useful people in some ways, and we need them because they don't like war, they don't like dictatorship. but when it gets to their historical and economic analysis, they are in bad shape. And here we have the question of Roosevelt and Pearl Harbor. And the normal libertarian line is Roosevelt organized Pearl Harbor. Roosevelt took the very benign, peace-loving Japanese empire and goaded them into war with various kinds of embargoes and other treatments. And therefore, he's responsible. And, to make it even worse, he withheld the intelligence from the admirals and the generals in Pearl Harbor that would have allowed them to defend the U.S. fleet against the Japanese surprise attack. So Roosevelt is the devil incarnate. Now, this is a fantastic legend. This is a distortion. It is a monstrosity. And as a historian, I'm filled with revulsion also because politically, this is all wrong. My personal thesis is without a massive return to New Deal economic policies, there will be very little chance for human life in North America, at least over the next couple of decades. It's got to be a massive return to the New Deal. Now, there is a conspiracy. Roosevelt is the target of the conspiracy. And again, I'm begging your indulgence, but the mover of the conspiracy is Sir Winston Churchill. Now, I have to talk to you a little bit from the English-speaking world again. I had a member of my family, one of my grandmother's relatives, was in the British Army and was blown up at Gallipoli. And part of my background is that we knew that Sir Winston Churchill was a bungler and a fool because of what he did at Gallipoli that got our relative killed. He was walking along the beach, stepped on a mine, and nothing was ever found of this poor relative of mine up there in Yorkshire. And we had a picture of a pale-faced young man in the British Army uniform of the time. So when I hear New York Times telling me about how great Winston Churchill is, my blood boils. And again, you can call it this Yorkshire background. This is the real face of Winston Churchill. He's testing the Thompson submachine gun. Now, what's the idea? After the fall of France, the policies of the Clifton set, Lady Astor, Lord Astor, and all the rest of it, had gotten Britain into this terrible fix. And of course, Churchill says to his alcoholic son Randolph, what are you going to do? I'll drag the United States in. It's clear enough, right? No big mystery. And in some ways, it's understandable. I mean, in some ways, it's justifiable. But specifically the way he does it, these two people, these are both invisibles. You think you see them, but they're both invisible. This is General Marshall. He represents the invisible government. And especially Stimson. So he's the commander of the entire U.S. Army, big thing at the time. And Stimson is the head of the War Department, the Defense Department. Now, Stimson is also the ego ideal of Bush the Elder. He spoke when Bush the Elder graduated from Andover Prep School, public school. Stimson was there. So he's running the Defense Department, War Department, and he's the head of the Army. These are people who withhold the intelligence. They make sure that Roosevelt is not informed. And on the Navy side, this is the main villain of Pearl Harbor. Please make a note of him. He is Admiral Richmond K. Turner. And his function, and you can see this in various books, is that he blocked the intelligence going to Pearl Harbor. And he failed to tell the Pearl Harbor admirals and generals that they were doing the wrong thing and that they should have defended against the Japanese naval attack with aircraft carriers. The other thing is, the usual libertarian argument is Roosevelt cut off the intelligence to the Navy and the people in Pearl Harbor. It's the reverse. These forces, these two, this guy, cut off the intelligence to Roosevelt. They denied, as you see here, the purple was the Japanese diplomatic code, which the U.S. could read. Purple, Japanese diplomatic code. It tells you what they're going to do at a diplomatic code. It doesn't tell you where warships are going. So from September 1940 to January 41, no purple for Roosevelt. And if that's not enough, from May 1941 to 12th of November 1941, 6 months, no purple. Magic, this means code intercepts. Now, there's another naval code, JN-25. This is the one you've got to know where the warships are going. This is the Japanese fleet code. It's sometimes called the 5-number code. It's the warship code.